At the end of a long and winding and ascending road, in the hills somewhere between the Los Padres National Forest and the Pacific Coast, a bearded man stands in his dusty driveway tinkering with his four-wheeler. It's mid-afternoon and quiet. The sun is high and strong, and the vantage in all directions stretches for miles, over the brush and the oak trees and the wildflowers, to the piney Figueroa ridgeline eastward and the scrub-spotted undulations surrounding. The man of note here is Chris Malloy, and he uncoils his posture at the sound of a van coming over the hill and into his space. From behind the windshield, the image I see is one I perhaps should have expected. A leathery fellow with mythical facial hair, in faded jeans, canvas jacket, and ball cap pulled low, calmly doing the dirty work. I pause for a second and take it in, thinking, well, there he is, the man I've come to see, Chris Malloy, legendary Chris Malloy, whose example has served as a sort of beacon of inspiration and reassurance and promise for me over the years. A figure whose surf career and influential creative work honor and blossom that hard-to-pin-down spirit of grit and adventure and earned competence that many worship but mainly only imagine, and that most park away as unattainable or unrealistic altogether. Not Chris, though. Chris has lived it and captured it, thoughtfully and beautifully, for decades. And here he is, a man who has traveled with his brothers and friends documenting rollicking excursions the world wide, from Indonesia to Chile to Sumatra to Scotland to you name it and back. Here he is on a Monday in his driveway getting a few things done before his kids come home from school. The shadow cast by Chris's hat brim is no match for the blue beaming eyes beneath it. His handshake, as you might imagine, is hearty. And before I know it, we're in the four-wheeler ripping around the property for a quick tour, away from the new home, past the tent Chris lived in for 3 years with his wife and 3 children, along the gardens and the pasture toward the animals in the barn, then back to the house, where we set up at a big wooden table, his collie pup Deuce napping at our feet. And beyond the driveway, the rolling and distractingly beautiful Southern California panorama Chris calls home.
Been on this piece of dirt for 4 years.
Oh, the house is...
Yeah. And I grew up in Ojai, California, and which is just down the road. And then we lived in Lompoc and in Gaviota. So different ranches. When I left Ojai, I traveled for about 20 years and wanted to go see what was around the corner all the time, and so I got to go see the world, and then moved back 20-ish years ago with my wife, and we bounced around from ranch to ranch, and finally we found this piece of dirt, and so we've been settled here for 4 years, and I feel like I'm new here, but I've been in this region my whole life.
Yeah.
You know, this area.
Yeah. So 4 years here, 100 acres or so, absolutely beautiful. New home, 3 kids, and a bunch of animals.
Yeah, we got cattle, sheep, chickens, hogs, horses, and a donkey named Jeffrey.
The donkey named Jeffrey. Love
Yep.
it. The what was it? So you grew up in Ojai.
Yep.
And was your upbringing, was it similar to this? I'm not all that familiar with Ojai.
Yeah, it was. It was. We grew up in a 1920s farmhouse on a tiny. It was a couple acres, but there was nothing around. Mm-hmm. And then we butted up against the citrus orchards, which butted up against the Los Padres National Forest.
Okay.
So I thought I grew up on 1 million acres.
Yeah.
I didn't. It was years later that when I was like probably 15, I realized no, we just live on a little place. But we always had animals. We always were running. My dad would take us up to Cuyama and different ranches, and so no, I feel very lucky for that upbringing and watching what Ojai has become. That's a bit of a sight to behold. It's so very different, and I still love it to death. When those orange blossoms are popping and you get those alpine glow on the topas, it just brings me back to 1979.
That's cool, man. And what was it like? How would you describe that? You mentioned you grew up on in your mind as a kid, 1 million acres. I imagine that gives you a certain energy as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, you could go on a Saturday morning or something. You could go and walk until your legs fell off. Like, I mean, there was just and never see a person.
Yeah.
You know, up Gridley Trail, you pop over back into the Sespe, and there was make your way up to Chief's Peak and rim around to Ladybug, and like yeah, there was never a time where you had to deal with people or traffic, or it was wide open.
Yeah.
And here we are. What are we, like, as a crow flies 100 miles away from LAX.
Right.
But I felt like I was getting to grow up, and I don't know. That's why I came home. I mean, I was like, after seeing the whole world, I was like, I wanted to come back to where I grew up.
Yeah.
That's what I love, And,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we were very, very lucky in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great group of kids that we grew up with, and yeah, it'll always be home to me, even though it's changed so much.
Sure. Yeah, it seems like your lifestyle, from what I've gleaned from being a fan of your work and your brother's work as well, the lifestyle that you've led and continue to lead is very unconventional and also romantic. At least to me as an outsider, a lot of what you do, whether it's farming or making adventure films, is something that, speak for myself as an outsider, is like, wow, that is so cool, and also so almost like fairy tale-ish for someone who doesn't do that.
Yeah, I battle with that in terms of, feel like all these years we've just been doing what was like, fuck, let's go do that. Like, that's badass. Like, let's go do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? and whatever it was, it's how my dad raised us.
Yep.
It's how he was.
Yep.
I've said this many times before, but I remember as a kid watching him ride broncs in King City one weekend, and then going to Baja with him to surf on the next weekend.
Yep.
And it was just like, if that's cool shit, let's fucking do it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we followed my dad's lead, and if you work hard and you put your head down, and luckily my brothers and I are, I would say, we're semi-athletic, and we know how to take direction. Mm-hmm. And you fall into a group of, whether it's Dean Potter or Timmy O'Neill or Roger Erickson or Derek Dorner, and you get to be around these legends.
Yeah.
And you stay down and you watch.
Yeah.
And then you get just good enough where they'll let you in.
Yeah.
They'll let you in. And then I've always been in any group, any group, like, I feel like I've always been the very last guy on the totem pole. I'm like just capable enough to be a part of that crew.
Yeah.
Not even be a part of the crew. Just let me tag along. Mm-hmm. I grew up with, Shane Dorian and Kelly Slater, Rob Machado, and my ability, it was so minute compared to what these guys were doing, but I was able to tag along, And so, you mentioned that word romantic. I just turned 49, and I am starting to look back and be like, we got to do some cool shit. Like, I am, for the first time. I guess that's a sign of getting old.
Yeah.
But I always have gotten up early, and just been excited about the day. Mm-hmm. And be like, fuck, what's around that corner? Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. And you also, you can dedicate yourself to something. Some guys can just dedicate themselves to one thing forever.
Yeah.
Especially the really gifted guys. But for me, every 10 years or every, 15 years, I feel like, okay, well, I proved to myself that I'm never going to be a master at this. And I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
So let's go see what happens.
Yeah.
And I've had just incredible luck with the people that I've hooeyed up with, the guys that I've glommed onto and tagged along with. And so it's been a good run.
Yeah.
It's been a good run. But I don't, the other thing people will say sometimes are like, oh man, you're so lucky. Got to do all this shit. I'm like, motherfucker, have you slept in your truck for 41 nights? Have you slept on couches? Have you slept in, have you even ever been hungry?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton of luck involved. But try paddling out at Pipe in 1990 with blue eyes. Just get your ass mucked out.
Yeah.
I mean, at that time, there's Jerry Lopez, there's Eddie Rothman, there's Dan Kealoha, Marvin Foster, and try getting a wave out there. Try not getting your fins broke out. And I'm not saying any one of those guys did that to me.
Yeah.
But that stuff did happen, and it was the Wild West.
Yeah.
And so, it's you pay your dues, and I think that's something that's lost a little bit these days. People, they think that they take a course in something and then now they get to do that. That's not the way it works, man. Yeah. Like you pay your dues. You pay your dues. So and again, I'll say it again. I'm not a particularly talented surfer, so I had to work extra hard and hang in there. And in the process, I got a couple good waves. So
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the things when I was driving up here, thinking about a lot of reflection on what was it about your story that interested me, and that was one of the things that came up, was that your time that you had spent in Hawaii, and how that and I'm not a surfer, but I'm somewhat privy to the culture, and I have friends who surf, and I've watched your films, and it fascinates me, and particularly the culture that you just referenced, that not necessarily looking to welcome outsiders, but how you and your brothers you and your brothers did earn the respect of a group that is not actively making any attempt to let people into that world.
Well, we had a cheat sheet. So we grew up in Ojai. And so the places that we were surfing, Silver Strand, Oxnard Shores, I won't even say the other places because that would cause me issues as to this day.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say all the spots. But we grew up in the school of hard knocks, and so when we got to Hawaii, we understood the alpha in the lineup and the hierarchy. We were very, very aware of that. So when you're in that kind of construct, those guys consciously or subconsciously understand that you understand your place. Yeah. You understand your place, and that's something in our culture right now that people, if you say to somebody, "Hey, you know your place," I mean, it's just people's eyes roll back in their head.
Right.
But we knew our place.
Yeah.
We knew our place, and we and then you go balls to the wall, and you go on bombs, and like those guys are like, over time they're like, shit, this kid's going.
Yeah.
He's going.
Yeah.
And he's getting the fuck out of my way.
Right.
And then, I feel like for me at some of those spots, it took a decade of knowing my place and respecting the elders. Yeah. Respecting the elders.
Right. Yeah. Respect.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
And, when I go to Hawaii now, whether it's Kaino McGee or, we miss Marvin, but, Marvin Foster, I get a bear hug. Hey, how's it, Betta? When you gonna move home?
Yeah.
And like, I'm just like, it means so much to me.
Yeah.
But it's because I knew my place. I had reverence for the Hawaiian culture.
Yeah.
And I was respectful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's something that's a little bit lost. We talk about, I think the surf media is a joke on a lot of levels. I think there's some great surf journalists out there doing a great job. But there's this sensationalism about this fabricated term surf rage. It's this like big thing, and it's fucking bullshit. Of course, there's bullies in every aspect of life. So of course there's going to be bullies that are surfers. But they sort of mesh that with a healthy lineup in the water. Whereas like, yeah, man, the woman that's been surfing this wave for 50 years, she gets the best wave out of the set. And for you to challenge her is disrespectful to the lineage that we have as surfers.
Sure.
You know what I mean? She knows what the flora and fauna are in the water. She's lived with this reef her whole life. And you come in and you backpedal her?
Yeah.
You know, and then they equate a confrontation with surf rage.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not surf rage.
That's not what it's about.
It's common sense.
Right. Common sense. And I was going to, as you were saying that, I'm thinking, it's emotional intelligence, it's respect, it's your word reverence is the best one. But and also to your credit, sounds like a lot of guts and effort to then complement that respect and that understanding of the culture, and that effort also to get to know what that culture meant and how to respect it, and all of that is surround emotional intelligence in general, and not having hurt feelings if you're not welcomed right away.
And are you really? Yeah, man. And it's like, are you really? Is this just a aquatic hydrodynamic surf park for you? Is this a climbing gym for you? Or do you know what the Duke did and said? Do you know who George Freeth was? Do you know who Tom Blake was? Do you know who Leroy Grannis was? Do you know who George Greeno was? Do you care about this really, really special endeavor, which is also, maybe I'm being too precious. I mean, it's also just a really, as Mark Cunningham put it, it's a really beautiful diversion. So going back to that idea of the media loving to drop that thing, surf rage, it's like, it's so not well put. It's so a misrepresentation of the elders who are holding it down in a good, healthy, respectful lineup.
It's a negative oversimplification. It's a generalization.
Yeah, and it makes us look like apes.
Right.
When we're really, I would say, more chimpanzees.
You reference, Duke, like for having done so much in that world and knowing and having such respect and interest in that world, what stands out if you were to be put on the spot? What stands out about what those guys said? Because
Duke?
Yeah.
Duke Kahanamoku?
Yeah. So
his surfing, of course, stands out.
Yep.
And then he was an Olympic swimmer. And he came to a place where he saw himself as an ambassador for the act of riding waves, which brought so much to him.
Yeah.
And but I think even more than any of that, he was Hawaiian and very dark complexion, and he was traveling during a time when he wasn't allowed to go to certain places. He wasn't allowed to, because the segregation at that time was so intense, and he forged through all of that.
Yeah.
And with a smile most of the time. I mean, he was a badass. Guy he was badass. But he's setting swimming records on a world level. He's changing surfing. I would say changing isn't the right word. He's perpetuating, that ancient, activity.
Yeah.
Which millions and millions of people do today, and he really, really was a huge part of perpetuating that.
Yeah.
But culturally, he endured some very, very, very heavy racist stuff, and he did it elegantly, and he did it, and he transcended it all.
Yeah.
Not unlike Ikua Purdy, you know, Ikua Purdy was a Hawaiian roper.
Yeah.
Cowboy, I should say. And he went and beat everybody on the mainland, steer stockman, and experienced tons of racism, but he did it.
Yeah.
And like proved to the world that this little island, or this group, this chain of islands, like these guys were as good or better than anybody in the world.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So the surfing, you know, you mentioned you're not a talented surfer. You worked hard. How about with film work? Your films have been, and I'm not even a surfer, but the sense of adventure that you referenced earlier, you know, looking what's around the corner, getting up early, what do you feel excited about? Let's go explore it. You capture that feeling in all of your films, and let's talk about that. Let's talk about how that came to be, and sort of, you know, what you did. Also, but what was that feeling that made you want to do each one, and what did you learn along the way as you kept going, because you've been doing them for a long time?
Yeah. So I've always loved composition and color, and at an early age I was like, you know, I would see something that, like, not even knowing what it was, but it could be like, you know, Dorothea Lange or Sebastian Salgado or Man Ray, and like I was like, wow, I just was drawn to it. And then when I was surfing, I was, you know, in front of the camera, and I was getting to work with Jeff Hornbaker and Art Brewer and these guys that were really good lensmen. Like, they were making really cool stuff, and I was fascinated by that. And then, but not really ever having any intention to be involved in film. Because I was like, I'm gonna surf forever. Yeah. like I this gig I got right now, like, I'm never gonna quit. Well, it turns out that pro surfers don't quit; they get fired when you turn a certain age, right? Yeah. And then in '97, I had a pretty catastrophic accident, surfing pipeline, and so I said, you know what? I've saved up a few bucks, and and right now everything that's being made is on video, and it's punk rock music, and it doesn't, and it was fun. It was super fun, and like tons of energy, and they were awesome for what they were, but it wasn't what I was experiencing on my travels, whether it was New Guinea or Chile or, you know, Sumatra or Java or you know, all these amazing places. Because for me, I was really loving culture, the culture of the people, and so you know, early on, I also was such a fan of like John Severson, the Witzig brothers, Albert Falzon, George Greeno, and many more. But the films that they had made. Gilvery, all these guys, they were making these films on film, actual film, putting this beautiful music to it, and they were lensing in a way that you could see. They would compress a lot of scenes, so you felt that foreground, and you felt your wave and surfer, and then you felt the background, right? So they're using longer lenses, getting further back, and compressing that stuff. So you didn't get just the maneuver of the surfer, you got the natural setting, and context, you know, and I really loved that. And in the '90s, surfing went to like full frame. You could be in the most magical place, but all you saw is this guy, you know, gyrating down the line. Yeah. You know, and so I said, gosh, you know what? I'm gonna try to make a film. So we got our hands on an old Bolex. My friend Jack and my cousin Emmett, and we set out and made a film. And I thought it would be my one and done. Like I was like, you know, I just wanted to do it, and it was kind of an homage to the guys that I had come up under, you know. And then I had so much freaking fun doing it. I'm like, I gotta keep doing this. This is so fun. So and here we are, you know, 25 years later, and you know, I'm heavily involved in film now. see something that makes me so excited, I have that weird, I could say urge, but it might be a compulsion
Yeah.
to want to share it with, you know, I mean, I usually make a film for 3 people, like my best friends. And if they like it, then I'm good. My films, I'll never win an award for anything. And I never have. But they kind of tend to kind of hang out.
Yeah.
You know, they just kind of soak, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that space.
Right.
That's what I'm after.
Yeah. I think that speaks too to the fact that it seems like a lot of what you do, your lifestyle and your work, is, like I said, it's romantic. It's also easy to, you know, for you to be patting yourself on the back because it is just very cool what you do. But what I've noticed in your films is, despite how cool it is, you're not taking yourself too seriously, and it's not what it captures is the authenticity of whatever the urge or the compulsion was that made you want to make these films. And I think that that's why it translates to people, even for folks that aren't surfers, is because it's that kind of fountain of youth pull to adventure that you're able to capture.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, that's interesting insight. And I think one of the things that I've noticed in surf cinema, surf journalism, is that there's certain people, and I won't name names, that think surfing is super important. And within that, they think they're important. And they wax poetic about, you know, I mean, you can tell how much I love the history of surfing and how much it means to me, but it's not important. And the people that have made it so goddamn important, and their self-importance have really inspired me to not give a shit. You know, like I'm like, it's like, listen,
other direction.
You can talk about your freaking rails, and you can make websites about yourself riding something and doing this thing and doing da 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 da, and just like drone on for decades about yourself doing this stuff, or you can go grow food and then surf when you can. That's kind of, they've inspired me to do that. You know, and I'm not saying I'm taking the right path whatsoever, but it's made me, it's just turned me off. I mean, I gave away 80% of my surfboards. I'm down to like 10. My wax on my boards is dirty. I don't think I own a leash. And I go down and fuck around in the water, and I just enjoy the heck out of it, you know? And like, if the surf's good, then, you know, I get great surf. And we're lucky where we live. We do get great surf. But I just giggle at these guys that are in their late 40s, early 50s, you know, who are just living off of their own sort of imagined legend. It's like, who fucking cares, man? Like, who cares? And they'll start these little like quasi cults based around themselves. The funnest part about it is none of these guys can run a tractor. They can't fucking do shit. They're just like, it's actually mysterious. I'm like, so how do you make a living? You know? And same with a lot of these surf journalists. I don't think you can make money off being a surf journalist. You know. Anyway, now I'm going to get myself in trouble.
What have you learned? What have you learned about storytelling in general? I guess having made those documentaries, doing your work for Farm League, you obviously have done a great job at it and continue to excel at it in different facets, whether it's a surf film or 180 South or Farm League stuff with Joe Montana. Like, tell me about how you look at stuff as you approach it, how you try to capture what you want to capture.
Sure. So, you know, I barely got through high school, and I have no education in film. And with a surf movie, it's like you know, my best friends were the best surfers in the world. So I had such a head start there, right? And at the time, you know, there was no internet or Instagram, and like we would just disappear for months at a time, and the world wanted to know what these guys were doing. And so we would go capture that stuff on 16 and transfer it, trade surfboards for telecine and time on an Avid, and you know, I was like hawking all kinds of stuff just to get time to edit, and you know, and it was just so much fun. When you make a surf film, generally you just get this really dynamic footage, right? And then you pick your favorite music. If it's really beautiful footage and beautiful music, like it's, I don't know. I mean, it's just, you just put it together, you know?
Yeah.
There's themes, but there's not really an arc too much. There's not so much a beginning, middle, or end. I mean, you always save like your best sessions for the end because you want to end with a bang. 180 South was the film where I really understood. I started to understand how little I knew.
Interesting.
Yeah, how sort of how little I knew, and that's what, when we finished 180 South, I didn't watch it for 6 years. I hated it.
Really?
I hated it. I was so frustrated. And it was because of my own stubbornness. I had a lot of great people in my corner that were encouraging me, and I didn't know what I was trying to make. And then, you know, now I'm proud of it, you know, but it was a really, really tumultuous time for me, and it was because of my ignorance and my stubbornness and not understanding what a story was. And through that, over the years, I've been able to chip away, and I feel like I'm still in that process of understanding how a story really works. And, you know, there's times now where I'll watch, and I don't watch a lot, but I'll watch movies, like a good one, and I'll just tell my wife, Carla, I'll say, I quit. Because I can never do anything. Because I can never do anything that amazing, you know. But you know, through doing some commercial work and the doc work, I've learned so much about how film works and how a day goes when you're trying to accomplish something, and I really enjoy it. I do. I really enjoy it. I cannot say enough about the people that I get to work with, how hard they work, how talented they are, how experienced they are. You know, I mean, you have your good days with, you know, documenting stuff, and then you have your tricky days, and you know, your subjects are always gonna kind of lead the way on how that day goes, you know, that people get in their moods. But overall, man, I just love to dive in. Yeah. I always say with doc work, my strength is finding amazing people and then getting out of their way. Yeah. And just letting them be them. I'm not trying to get them to say anything or form them into something that I want them to be. I think I'm good at finding really amazing people and then just letting them be themselves.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. What is it, if you could put it to words, that you see in those people that makes you want them to be included, either as a subject or on the team?
As a subject, it's just like finding awesome people that kind of don't give a shit about being on camera, that aren't usually on camera, and then just like letting them know that they can trust me. Sure. Generally, I will show a cut to people. I'll let them know at the beginning. I'm like, look, be yourself. Do whatever you want to do. And I got your back. And before I release this, I'm going to show it to you. And if there's something that you are not comfortable with, I'll cut it. Yeah. You know, that just makes their shoulders relax. Yeah. And they're like, okay, I trust you. Yeah. Yeah. And it's this kind of thing, you know, eye to eye.
We can do that on this too.
So yeah, that's kind of like my approach, you know. And I think that like the guys that with doc work that win awards are guys and girls that win awards are they don't really care about their subjects. They're there to extract. And they will push their subjects and push their subjects and push their subjects almost to tears. And I tend to really care about who I'm working with.
Yeah.
And so I don't tend to get that super emotional stuff that wins documentary film festivals.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting.
But I'm fucking happy with that, because guess what? That person will come over for Thanksgiving dinner. You know what I mean?
I love it, man.
I'd rather break bread with them, you know, the next year than get a fucking trophy on my mantle.
Sure.
But I'm not. I just need to like say like, that stuff when some, you know, directors really push their subjects and it's tumultuous and acrimonious, really, and that is poignant stuff, and it does touch an audience, and so I'm not trying to knock that style. It's just not the way I work.
It doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah, I mean, I have, again, this goes back to our earlier part of our conversation, but like I have made a habit of, you know, finding people that inspire me and just riding their coattails and just listening and watching, and like that's my sweet spot. I mean, I never refer to myself as a director, but I do. That is what I do for a living.
Yep.
But I'm much more comfortable when I'm following a hero or following somebody that inspires me, and just, you know, it goes back to the surfing, you know, stuff. Keep your head down and listen and watch your elders and learn from that. So, yeah.
You mentioned some movies that you watch a movie and it makes you discouraged because they did it so well. What stands out?
Well, shoot. I mean, like the last one, and this isn't a brand new movie, but I watched The Revenant the other day, and I was like, I'm just going to go take my camera and throw it in the creek. I can never do that, man. It's just, you know, and I mean, I write every day, you know, and I love to draw, so I storyboard stuff, and I've got a whole drawer, you know, full of things that you know, it might be dialogue, it might be you know, a scene that takes, you know, 15 pages, it might be just a sentence, you know, and it's just all chicken scratch. But you know, that stuff all comes into play for me.
Yeah.
And it's really important for me to write every day.
Yep.
Especially with 3 kids and, you know, a ranch that we're running ourselves, to like make myself go sit and you know, sometimes I keep a little notebook in my top pocket, and it could be 3 things I'll write down, you know, and then I compile that and expand on it and stuff like that.
Yep. Same here.
So yeah, I mean,
helps you clear your mind.
Yeah, and also one thing that's really helpful for me is like I've got a few friends that I talk to a lot, and just to have, because living where we live, I mean, you can't see where we're sitting, one house. Like, look, 360 degrees, like you can, I mean, if you had like a telescope, you might be able to see something there. So I love isolation, but I also I love being around people too. So it's like that sort of dichotomy. But creatively, just to be able to bounce stuff off of friends, because it's not a social environment that I live in.
Sure.
And so I really value, you know, being able to talk with people and just be like, what do you think about that? You know, and what do you think about, and then inevitably they'll have some creative endeavor and they'll bounce something off me, and that, I love that. And and then my wife Carla, she's if I write something that I think this is fun. So if I write something that I'm proud of, I'll show it to her. And if she's like, nice, honey, and walks away, then I'm like, this sucks. But if she gives me that look, you know, like when she really gives me that look, I'm like, this is good.
I love it.
This is good. But it's always heartbreaking when she's like, pat me on the shoulder, nice.
Yeah.
I'm like, It sucks.
That's great that you guys have that collaboration.
Yeah.
What about, so you mentioned that during One of You South, you realized what you didn't know about filmmaking or storytelling. What I guess what was exposed during that experience that you took with you afterwards?
Well, all I'd ever done was surf movies, which, like I
Yeah.
said, is like, you just get incredible footage, incredible music,
Yeah.
and then you like cut it and paste it where it feels good.
Right.
And then with 180 South, we had multiple layers. We're talking about Jeff Johnson's journey, and then we're layering that with the 1968 trip that Doug and Yvonne did. So you're laying that on top of that. Then you have the layer of conservation. Then you have the layer of the past, the present, and we talk about the future. And then we have these characters, right? So we're supposed to understand all of these characters. You have McCohay, you have Timmy O'Neill, you have Chris Tompkins, you have Doug Tompkins, you have the whole Sin Repressus group, and I was just overwhelmed because I didn't at that time know how to I just focused on Jeff, Yvonne, and Doug mostly, and I did, I mean, in retrospect, it's a bit sparse on dialogue, except for the Jeff's main voice. But if I did it again, I would approach it completely differently. We would know much more about the other characters, and we would know, there would be more information. But at the time, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I wanted people to see it. It was about the spirit of the film. And if you liked it, then go do your research. That was my theory.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make the investors happy.
Well, for what it's worth, I loved it, and it was a major inspiration, and has continued to be. And
Thanks, man.
it's a time capsule. No matter what, it's a documentation.
That's exactly. Thank you for that. So, we thought that whole dam was going to go in, like at the end of the movie, and I said, it doesn't matter if it goes in. This is a documentation for people to see in the future that we were at this intersection or this crossroads of what could be or what didn't have to be. And I thought it was a foregone conclusion that at Valchok, that it was like just going to be changed forever.
Yeah.
And it needs to be a document, like you said, of a slice in time. And I've done a lot of. Here's my thing: is that I'm not a leave it alone conservationist. I support open spaces. I also am very, very supportive of agriculture, farming and ranching. So what I think that Tompkins did is they kept places wide open, but they also have been very, very supportive of agriculture. But what I enjoyed so much about getting to work on 180 South is that we got the voice of so many different characters, including the Gauchos, Suazos, who were 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th generation down there. The guys that were horseback. They got to have their voice too. It wasn't just urbanites coming in and declaring, that this is
Right.
this land will never be anything other than a hiking trail, and I'm really adamant about that approach. And if you go back to the, if you take it all the way back to, Aldo Leopold or Rachel Carson or some of these people. And Yvonne Chouinard, to be honest, their visions, they're not singular in how they see open spaces and how we utilize our land, and so I hope that came through in the film. I mean,
Yeah.
I wanted it to give a message to people that wanted to get outdoors, and I mean, really, at the end of the day. You can do bumper stickers, T-shirts, slogans, rallies, marches, whatever. But what informs somebody to want to protect wild places? It's when they fall in love with wild places. That's when they become a champion for wild places. You know, when they do a mailer out and like people are like, yay, like green, 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 but like you live on 42nd Street. And I'm not knocking those people. I'm just saying, like, the people that are, you know, real soldiers for protecting ag and protecting wild places are people that have lived in it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
like they've lived in it. Like, you know, if you gotta know something to fall in love with it.
Yeah, back to earning your stripes.
I guess
Yeah.
so. I didn't think we'd get into this. I don't talk about this stuff much, but it's
great.
fun. Yeah, it's fun.
It's great.
Yeah, it's a very complicated topic.
Yeah.
What I learned from, you know, our agrarian elders and their lifelong, generational stewardship of the land, along with Chris Tompkins, Doug Tompkins, people like Wes Jackson, Steve Jones, Riley Starks. There's this sort of duality in how we protect the land, right? So, in my eyes, I humbly would offer that you have areas that are, you know, it's all about our flora and fauna, right? It's all about the biomass that occurs in its native form. But we also know that wide open spaces can be stewarded by forward-thinking farmers and ranchers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I've been so blessed to you know, meet people like Nita Vale, who are protecting rangelands and you know, in a smart you know, farm field or a smart pasture, you know, you're still having native animals thriving, and you're producing food for your community, and that really, at the end of the day, having both of those things, I think that's success. And there's a bunch of people out there that are working hard, and they really understand that for what it is. And so, you know, my family is learning week by week, month by month, and really trying to follow in those footsteps. And we have so much to learn. There's so much to learn. But again, you know, we've got incredible teachers and,
Mm-hmm.
and people that inspire us to you know, get up every day and go run the rabbits out of the farm field. And
Yeah.
It's not glamorous, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not glamorous.
When did you become a farmer, and what is it like?
I'm not a farmer.
Or-
I'm not a farmer. I work for a farmer. We have a small farm field here, and we produce for our local community, and we have a little farm stand. My wife has been growing food for about 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
We're very careful about using the term farmer because we have had mentors who are some of the best farmers, I'd say, in on the West Coast. And yeah, we're just careful. Like, I'm almost like, we grow food.
Tell me more about that. What are you? You don't feel worthy of calling yourself that, or?
Yeah, I wouldn't feel worthy of that. I mean, I'm like, I drive tractor and I help plant and I do everything. But I think that it's been in the last, you know, while, you know, you see all these people, they have like a planter box or something, and then it's just like Better Farms and Gardens or some bullshit, or they have somebody else do it and they stand there and take it. Like, it's like we just want to respect the elders that have really helped us to learn. But my wife Carla's badass. I mean, I work for her.
Yeah.
And I would call her a farmer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would your elders that you referenced, would they call you a farmer? Or is it just you being ultra humble?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, you can't be a farmer and do 3 weeks of planting and weeding and then leave for 2 weeks to go sit on some soundstage or something. Like, a farmer's committed.
I see.
All day, every day.
Yeah.
All day, every day.
Yeah.
And I can't do that. You know, it's not in the. But my favorite days or when I'm with the kids and we're harvesting and we know that, you know, we got the farm stand like loaded and we know we're going to go share the food that we made with our local community. I mean, that's like my favorite days. I love it so much,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
But maybe come back in like 2 decades and ask me if I'm a farmer.
Let's do it.
But like I farmed a field last year. I think I did a good job. Like we put up 700 bales of oat hay or forage hay, but one of the elders was like, "Okay, plant now. Mm-hmm. Okay, work the ground now. Harvest now." Like, you know, anybody can run a tractor.
Yeah.
You get in it and you push the fucking gas, or you know, the throttle. But it's the people that can really read the weather, read the soil, read the ground, read the seed. You know, and I'm lucky enough to have some elders that I'm not afraid to do the work. Like I do the work. It's just so, like my wife Carla, it's so smart about exactly when and how and what, you know, and so, yeah.
Well, if you need, I'm here. A not smart but physically hard worker.
All right.
You got it.
All right. Be careful what you ask for.
So I guess a couple more things I want to ask you about. I know you said you only want to do an hour.
No, whatever.
There's a couple things that I'm curious about. One being, you know, I know that your father was a big influence on you and your brothers, and that you're a father, and that you reference, you know, your kids are already working, you know, are working on your property basically from the get-go. And so eventually I want to talk about kind of what sort of lessons you like to pass on to them.
Yeah, I mean, all I ask from them is to work hard at what they love and respect everyone around them. That's it.
Yeah.
And then my job is to find what they love and then support that. You know, so it's simple as that.
Yeah.
It's to me, you know, there's no self-help parenting bullshit. Fucking, like, I don't, you know, like, I don't, none of that. It's just, and I see around me, and I don't mean to be judgmental, but it's like I see the people that have read all the books and done the seminars about being a parent, and it's like, it's an absolute shit show. You know, it's like, be respectful to the people around you, no matter who they are. Get up, make your bed, get to work. And if that work is fun, you know, that is one thing that I encourage them. I say, listen, if you guys do really well, I encourage you to work really hard at what you love, because then you can probably make a living out of it. Mm-hmm. You know, lazy people end up working at jobs they hate. You know? And why are they lazy? Because their parents didn't teach them how to get up early and work hard, you know, and look people in the eyes. And so, and that's I'm 14 years into this, you know, being a dad, and I dang sure don't think I have it figured out, but I'm trying, you know. I'm sure that's all I ask, you know, from the kids.
Yeah.
That's all. And so far, you know, we have our days, but I mean, most of all, I'm really proud of them, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. I love that. And then I guess, and I have a tendency, speaking of rambling, but a tendency to ask sort of abstract questions. Mm-hmm. And maybe you do or don't have any thoughts on this. But I'm kind of curious, like, what is it, you've referenced along the way, you know, what's around the corner and pursuing what interests you. And I also can tell from your work, but also from talking to you, that you're very earnest. Whatever you're after, there's a deep feeling of connection to it. And my question is, what does it do for you to dig into these things, to explore whatever it is that pops up? How would you describe that, and why do you feel like you're compelled to do it?
You know, there's I wish I could say there was a lot of forethought and planning and having a specific goal on why I was doing it. But it really just comes down to just being a frothy kid, like being just waking up and being like, again, I'll go back to it. It's like, you know, like what if we went to Scotland and found waves? And then I'll tell you a story about Scotland. So, I mean, this is a kind of a perfect example of kind of like sums it up. Is like we're in Scotland and we're gonna go way up to the north. I won't name the wave. We take the train up there. There's 3 of us. It was before all the great forecasting. We went up there and this wave's supposed to be amazing. Nothing there. It's flat. So we take the train down to Glasgow and there's a show. It's Sebastião Salgado and Henry Cartier-Bresson, who are my favorite, right? We're young. We're not married. It was Hans Hagen and Brad Gerlach. And we go to a party. We got invited to a party, and somebody gave us a giant bag of mushrooms. And then we were like, okay, there's still no swell, so let's go to Amsterdam. So I go in the airport to like book our flights. Well, by the time I get back out to the car, they had eaten the mushrooms. So I'm like, okay, one of us has to be not on mushrooms because we're in a foreign country.
Yeah.
So these guys are just being hilarious. Like just so fun. And so we jump back on the train. We couldn't get the flight to Amsterdam. We jump back on the train, and this is over the course of like 5 days, right? So there's a whole up and down, a whole crazy thing. We get up to the north of Scotland, and the wave is just going off. Like it's like double overhead, offshore, just ripping rights.
Yeah.
Surf for like 10 hours straight, get on the train, fly down past Loch Ness and all the whole of Scotland, jump on our plane, and like come home. And all of that, because to your point, to your question, it was like, it was never a question, what should we do today?
Yeah.
So get up and fucking go.
Yeah.
Jump on a train with a bag full of food that you just grabbed there and just go.
Just go.
You know, like it's just never. And as I've gotten older, I'm not as much like that. You know, I mean, I'm almost 50, and now I'm like, whew, I'm gonna nestle up with a good book and a little cup of mint tea.
Yeah.
And but that's not actually true, because with 3 kids, you don't never get to do that.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Apocryphal.
Yeah.
Do you know what that word means?
Yeah.
It means like false.
False, right.
There was this new kid that came to Patagonia, and he was like, I was like trying to imbibe like some of the lore of I had been there for 17 years.
Yeah.
And I tell him this like story that I lived through with the founders.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, that sounds apocryphal. And I'm like, first of all, the tone of that is weird. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? And he's like, like false, like untrue. And I was like, cool, man. I'm glad you went to fucking college.
Yeah.
While you were in fucking college, I was in the backcountry with Yvonne, fucking understanding the story, or living the story.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
And it's like, anyway, I always remember that word apocryphal, because that fucking kid called me out. Fucking dipshit.
Oh, man.
Apocryphal.
That's funny, man.
One thing that I'm really into is on the other side of the spectrum is comedy.
Yep.
And the storytelling, to have the balls.
Oh my gosh.
Because when you write a book or you make a film, you get to sit there in a dark room and chip away on it for usually months and months and months. And then you're like, okay, this is how I want it.
Right.
But to walk out in front of a group with no teleprompter,
Right.
no nothing.
Yeah.
And you set a premise, right?
Right.
And then you weave together, like, it's so precarious.
Yeah.
And when you look at the greats, and you watch them work, and you watch them make people happy, and you watch them kind of press people, right?
Yeah,
they're
sure.
you know, most of the good comics like push buttons, right?
Sure.
Like you know, Chappelle.
Yeah.
Like he'll come out and start a premise, and you're like, oh, dude, I don't know how you're gonna get out of this one.
Yeah,
right?
that's a good way of putting it.
Well,
Yeah.
and I like even like Bill Burr, you know, his
Yeah,
stuff.
of course.
I call him
I was
like
gonna say that.
I call him like the comedy Houdini.
Yeah.
Because he comes out and he sets a premise, and they're like, dude, you're in a straitjacket, and they're about to throw you in the freaking like the water tank.
Yeah, yeah.
What you just said,
Yeah.
you can't get out of that.
Yeah, no.
And by the end of what he says, everybody's dying laughing.
Yeah.
And they get it,
Yeah.
and he made a point that was real.
It is magic.
And so I really, you know, for me, it's like if I can cry laughing once a day, then that's like my what's that thing called, the Prozac or something?
Yeah.
That'll make me happy.
I love it, yeah.
That's my, it's just, and I don't sleep a ton, so I'm up usually between 3:30 and 4, and which isn't good. I go to bed early though.
Yeah.
And I'm in the dark, and I'm like, what's this day gonna bring? And I'll put on a good comedian, and I'm sitting there in the dark, and I'll wake my wife up, Carla, and she's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm laughing my ass off. I'll watch SNL and like all that stuff, like, and I mean, like Kristen Wiig, there's so Tina Fey, all these
Gotcha.
people, they just, because for me it's important to balance, you know, like a Dostoevsky or Cormac McCarthy or a Will Oldham, or, you know, now I'm getting into music, you know, or a Benjamin Todd, and these people with, you know, a Chappelle or a Will Ferrell. Like I've gone through stretches where it's just all, you know, when you listen to Dark all day every day, you know, it's not good.
Yep.
It's not good for you. So I try to balance, like,
Amen.
I try to balance it, you know.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Absolutely. You won't call yourself a farmer. You won't call yourself a director. If you were asked, what would you say you are?
Yeah, that's a great question. Oh shit. I think. I mean, there's only a couple things that like I can. You know, I dedicated 30 years of my life to surfing, so I can say I'm a surfer.
Yep.
You know, really, at the end of the day, and then first and foremost, and this is, I can't get out of this one, but I'm a dad.
Yeah.
Whether I like it or not, and a husband. So, you know, that's those are, you know, and yeah, you know, and yeah, those are the things that I spend my time doing is trying to take care of this place and having a hot breakfast for the kids before school ready when I'm home, you know, and trying to keep these goddamn tractors running. It's just, oh man.
Yeah.
So I say that I'm a surfer, but like these days I'm not surfing that much. You know, if I was dedicated, I would be leaving the family every morning at 6 and just going and beachcombing and surfing. But that's not really what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. As someone who has admired you for a while, I just want to say how grateful I am to get to talk to you. And I think that something that's very important to me, and that I'm trying to lead my life by, is this premise of that the decisions you make and the actions you take define what you stand for, and therefore what your life could potentially represent. And I feel like you and your brothers, from what I've gleaned over the years of once I found out about you, is that you're so intentional and earnest with your choices. And to have you on the show is I feel very lucky, and I'm very thankful that you let me come over and sort of unsolicitedly ask you a bunch of questions and at your own home. And it's a pleasure to meet you and pleasure to hang. And
well, hey, I really enjoyed the hangout, and you putting up with my long-winded blathering. And you said when you got here that you would do some work here on the ranch. So,
Let's go.
now that we're done, it's time to rock and roll, buddy.
Let's go.
Thank you for having me with you. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome, dude. That was great. I love it.
That's all for now, folks. That was the venerable Chris Malloy. Thank you, Chris, for being on the show. That was fun. Listeners, be sure to check out Chris's work with Farm League and his other films, 180 Degrees South, Thicker Than Water, Unbroken Ground, Step Into Liquid, A Brokedown Melody, and many more, and lots of great work to come, I'm sure. Thank you also to Aaron Mason for the sound expertise and North Americans for the music. And of course, thank you all for tuning in to the Jalapeno Podcast. This is Ty, your host. And until we meet again, be well, take care, much love.